Morning, everybody.
Good morning, Charlie.
Good morning, good morning. So everyone have fun last night? Have a good time? Anyone stay out past 2 o'clock in the morning? Hands?
Oscar's not even here, so we know that.
Well, we know Oscar was probably out at least till...
Hey, Oscar.
He already told me.
How are you?
He's here. Oscar's here. So, all right, we got a great day coming up today. So, well, what Neil and I are going to do is share a couple of takeaways from yesterday. They're not meant to be comprehensive, just a few things that we plucked out of the air from what we heard and some of the conversations we were having. And obviously, we began the day with Jose's recap of his of the research that we conducted, or he conducted for Alzma from the members. And I mean, it was a lot about the trends in you know, customer growth, ARPA growth, you know, circulation, distribution, traffic, revenue, et cetera. But I think the biggest takeaway is that the trends that happen in one place eventually happen in another place. It's very consistent. So what you see it happen somewhere else,
It's going to happen
to you now, it's going to happen to you eventually.
It's just timing.
It's a matter of timing and sequencing.
Right?
And
it's timing.
So that's just a reality that anyone needs to grasp. Even if your market seems to be doing quite well with your core product, I think there's an eventuality or an inevitability to what's going to take place. But sort of the takeaway, sort of how to deal with that is probably the bigger question. Some of the things Jose shared, you know, simplified product lines and a clear value proposition. Certainly that's a good starting point. You know what you're selling, know how to explain it, and be confident that the product works and you can fulfill on your promise.
I think you know, the message that I think is really important is simplify. Yep. Because I don't think the reps out there, even let's assume they're going to be reps.
Yep.
Contrary to my
we'll get to that
point of view. But if you make that assumption that they're going to be reps, is simplify and simplify and simplify, because you can't train people on 12, 13, 14 different products and expect them to retain anything and actually be able to communicate that value proposition very, very effectively.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be a sort of a uniform, a sort of consolidation of all these point solutions into a uniform offering.
Well, I call it spaghetti.
Yeah.
The spaghetti's got to be resolved, because
explain what you mean by spaghetti.
Well, I mean, spaghetti is that, you know, the reps now have 10 and 15 products that they are selling. They're buying them from multiple vendors, and those vendors, the fulfillment on that end is like spaghetti. Mm-hmm. And as a consequence, as Michael said, you know, 14 days is too long from customers saying yes to having it implemented. It's too long, because they'll churn. And churn is the most expensive thing in this industry today, I think.
Right, which gets to some of the things Paul talked about.
Yeah.
One of many things. One of the things that sort of stood out for me was the notion that, you know, all great companies put the customer at the center, the customer experience, I think more importantly, at the center of what they do. And I think this industry has not made customer experience the priority.
No, they've usually put the sales rep at the center of the experience. Mm-hmm. And that's, you know, that may work, or, you know, I would say that's a very hard proposition.
It's a very large, it's not merely a shift, it's a complete transformation to go from a sales-driven culture to a customer-driven culture. And, you know, the Amazons of the world, you know, they've always put the customer at the center.
I saw something on the scroll today. That Amazon, you know, the scroll on CNN, the news scroll, that Amazon Web Services, which is their essentially it's servers.
Yeah.
Is worth $160 billion. There are very few reps selling that, okay? They've built a $160 billion business with very few people actually selling it, but what they do is service the hell out of the people who buy that stuff. That's a very, I mean, that $160 billion business, basically using server space. The margin on that, it's got to be their best business of all, because
but is your point
cost.
that business sold itself because they were already Amazon?
They were already Amazon.
Yeah.
So,
So, and then we heard from Michael. Can you reveal the name today?
I called your sister last night, and your sister said, no problem. She said, let it be known.
I guess not. Okay, we tried.
But he's smiling.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I heard from Michael, many things, but one is the notion of investing in your people and really sort of making that a priority. Obviously, the approach is maybe going off of his message, but I think branding has been a big challenge in this industry. Trying to figure out, are you a yellow brand? Are you disavowing the yellow brand? How do you sort of, how do you find the right balance there? And that's always a big challenge. I think some companies have gotten it very wrong at very high cost, and others have found that sort of modifying their existing brand works better than completely tearing it up.
Michael sent me a note today. It's actually a very, very good note. He said,
Is Michael? Or Michael?
Michael.
Okay.
People who say it cannot be done should not interrupt those who are doing it. That's a really important statement.
Is he saying you were interrupting him? Is that?
Now that may be why he sent it to me. I don't know, but it's really true. I mean, people who say it can't be done should really get out of the way of people who are trying to do it. And in most organizations, there is a high degree of naysayers and a high number of people who want to stay with the tried and true. And in this economy, in this culture, in this world today, those people have to get out of the way and let the people who believe that they can change things, let it happen.
Which I think brings in a bigger point, which is, you have 1,000 people, maybe to your point, 200 of them are get it. How do you, can you change this business by retraining people, or is there complete? A lot of the companies in this industry have changed over their personnel considerably.
I think the only winners in that model are the training companies.
Yeah.
The people who do sales training and pretend that they can actually reinvent people.
Mm-hmm. That's a difficult.
It's a really difficult proposition.
But I think a lot of companies have attacked that and really changed over their sales. Whether they've achieved what they want to achieve is another matter. But I think the idea that you can simply keep the people you have and make them different is kind of already asked and answered, I think,
right,
for the most part.
I think so.
So, all right. Want to just mention one other thing. Roger Dew. Is he in the room? I got it right that time. Really interesting presentation. I think he blew some minds in the room with this notion of sort of the Uberization of search. All these behavioral changes and how people consume information and what they actually believe and what messages they respond to. It's all completely turned upside down.
Well, when I was in Prague, there was a really interesting company called Who Do You? I don't know if any of you have come across Who Do You. And they're trying to basically take social signals around. Paul asked me about a winery in San Francisco in some public domain, whether it's in Facebook or in Twitter or in some social feed. And they're going to pull that stuff and allow other people to see that recommendation, because I say, you should go to the Vintage Inn in Napa Valley. That's going to be perhaps the next generation of recommendations and reviews. And the companies like Yelp are really faced with some very serious challenges, because I think, after 400 or 500 reviews, a negative review doesn't affect the number, or a positive review doesn't affect the number. And, I look
There's
at
something about the integrity of
exactly. And I look at some of those reviews, and I was traveling after the Cinda thing in Europe with my wife, and we relied on some TripAdvisor reviews, and we sort of wondered who wrote these things. I mean, this was really a local sort of unique place. I mean, it was like the buses drove up and dropped people off, and so it's very hard to sort of make sense of the authenticity of social stuff, and Who Do You is trying to do that, and I think Paul would agree that was a pretty interesting business. So.
Okay. Well, and there was a lot else yesterday, but those are some things that sort of jumped out at us. I want to talk a little bit about what we're going to do today.
I'm going to jump off the stage and let you.
You can go sit down. We're done with you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to start today with, as you heard from Yext yesterday, kind of an overview of what the company does. But today we're going to dive into a little bit of what some case studies, some actual examples of what they do with companies that they work with. From Rachel Martin, she'll be up here in just a moment. She's going to be followed immediately by our friend Peter Buxton, who's going to talk about his experience in Myanmar. I don't know. I think most of you know Peter, and he's recently taken the job running the business in Myanmar. And, he's an interesting challenge in the fact that that's a business, and he'll show you. I don't want to jump ahead of his presentation, but he still has a fairly robust print business. So how do you sort of position a company for change when the old business is still a robust business? That's actually an interesting challenge, and we'll hear from Peter about that. Got two case studies that follow that from ASUS and from Ibizu, both Malaysian operations, and very interested to hear that. And then Pete Ryan from Moon Valley will wrap us up before the break. After the break, we're going to hear from Tavo Siopa from Trudan in South Africa, and he's going to talk about something very important, I think, which is trying to build a digital culture. We've really touched on it a lot yesterday, and he's going to really share his experience in trying to do that. That will take us into lunch, and I'll leave it there for now. We have a great afternoon as well. So so let's get started with Rachel. Come on up. Yeah, it should be up here. There you go.
And a mic. Does it work?
Mic is right there. You can.
All right. Hi, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. So I'm going to start just by giving a quick recap for anybody that may have missed it or is unaware of what Yext is. Our goal at Yext is to put businesses back in control of their online storefront or their digital presence. And we do this through a very robust content management platform that lets small businesses and enterprises and in most cases internationally partners on behalf of small businesses manage all their content in our platform. And then through our Power Listings product, we push that out to a network of directories, mobile apps, navigation devices, and so on. And the real differentiator is that we guarantee that you will be listed if you're not already within a matter of days, if not hours. And then all of the updates to that content are almost instantaneous across the whole network. So it really does put businesses in control. We also talked a little bit about the opportunity, especially abroad, which is that the YP companies are making a digital transformation, and we want to help answer the question, how can you accelerate your growth? So today I'm going to talk about two examples of partners that we work with that have integrated our solution and help them with that transformation. So these were both actually presentations that were given recently last month at Cinda in Prague. One by Peter from DTG in the Netherlands, and the other by Lubos, who runs MediaTel in the Czech Republic. Both of the presentations were about 15-20 minutes long, so I've cut out a number of slides and a number of details there. But if anybody is interested, I have the videos for both of them as well as the presentations, and both Lubos and Peter have given their blessing to sharing these, so just let me know. Okay, so with that, we will start with DTG. So DTG realized a few years ago that the space was becoming increasingly fragmented, and I realize this looks a lot like my presentation yesterday. But they realized kind of as the yellow pages that with all of the sites and mobile apps and directories out there, and with the decline in print that they were starting to see, they were becoming less and less relevant. So they actually made a decision. Are we going to be a digital provider to small businesses in 5-10 years, or are we going to be a publisher? And while they haven't given up on the publisher idea, they actually are focused more on being providing digital solutions to businesses, which means their focus is now moving away from the publishing. It also means that they want to transfer their customer base over to new products that are digitally friendly. And what they've also found is that the small businesses are just as frustrated and kind of confused as they were, which is that their information is online, it's all over the place, and it's very hard to manage and control. So the approach that DTG took, and I would say that they're very early on in the transformation, they really got ahead of it, And a lot of that is actually due to Interballoons, which was kind of looking into this presence management solution overseas as well, and working closely with DTG on that. But the way that they sort of sold it was, well, now that you're on DTG and you're listed online here, why don't I just get you listed on these other 20 sites? You already have built your profile, let's just expand that. And that's the way that they started selling it. And when they started selling, this was early in 2014, they didn't do any sort of bulk upload. They actually were transitioning their customer base over time through telesales and field sales. So as of right now, they have 24,000 locations that are powered by Yext, and they call them network profiles. And in terms of the sales effort, when they first started, actually field sales was only around 10%. And part of the reason was they didn't really have their retention strategy set, and it was too low cost of a product, although now it's gotten up to 70%, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then telesales started at around 30%, now it's about 50%, and that took off right away. And part of the reason for that is the telesales team was so excited to actually talk about something new and talk about a new digital product versus being very defensive with the yellow pages. Why do I need to be listed? It's not as relevant as it was before. They could now get ahead of it. So in addition to sort of that strategy, which was moving their YP customers over, as Peter said, they did something that they've never really done before, because it's more in a startup world that you would do a free trial. But they actually started pushing customers towards this free trial, and this was just a couple months ago. I was an active part of those discussions. So they started to email prospects. They put a link on their directory saying, claim your listing here, just driving primarily new businesses to interact with their online yellow pages in some way. And when that happened, they had a rep that was reaching out and asking, do you want to try this free trial? So they were actually asking customers, do you want to try the service on these 20 other sites? So they've been giving away 200 free trials per week, and I think the conversion's around 20%, which is why they have 1,000 accounts that are waiting for upsell. And Peter has found that has been extremely successful in comparison to some of the other products and the things that they're doing over there. So the two learnings that he had kind of talked about, the first was to keep it simple. And these are definitely, I'm going to recap this as well, but this is definitely, both of these are things that we've also learned with other partners overseas, but also in the US. So keep it simple. They started with 2 versions of the product. And they basically found that the sales reps were just selling the cheaper product, because when you give businesses an option, they're going to go towards the cheaper, they want to spend less overall, and it was really easy, especially for this telesales team, to sell the cheaper package. And remember, the field sales was not really taken off yet. So DTG actually made the decision to get rid of the intro package completely and just focus on the higher priced package. And now they only have the Plus package. They've seen a higher NPS, higher APO, and they also saw a higher penetration, because then they found that when the sales reps were not even able to sell the cheaper product, it incentivized them to make their targets, and they ended up selling more. So as it stands now, they just have the Plus product, and it's very simple. They also use it as a retention tool, and I mean, the simple story is that they offer it at no extra cost, and they actually use the print dollars to fund it, and that's the way that they've been converting customers so successfully, and that's why they're seeing that 70% number out in field sales. So I'm going to move on to MediaTel. So this was Luboš that was giving this presentation in the Czech Republic. And they had a very different situation. So DTG, as I was saying, was a little bit ahead of the times. They saw that there was a decline coming. They decided they were not going to be as relevant as a publisher, and they moved towards the digital space, and they did that very early. MediaTel had a different situation, which was that the print revenues were in sharp decline, and it happened much faster than it was happening in other countries. So they had to do something quickly in order to keep their base. And so the other 2 things that were actually going on in the Czech Republic were that the 2 largest players, which I believe are Seznam and Centrum, both started to actually give away free profiles. So instead of having to pay to claim your profile, they were giving it away for free, and the print was on decline. So MediaTel, it was much harder for them to charge customers to do something that they could do for free somewhere else. So they were in, as Lubos said, more in a desperate situation. So what they decided to do, and I cut out a few slides in this presentation, but essentially they redid their whole strategy, their whole digital strategy. So when they talked to customers, the first thing they did was analyze that customer's overall, what their digital strategy should be. Then they pointed out which products that they themselves could offer, which is not necessarily all of the products that would be appropriate for that business, so they positioned themselves as a consultant. And then, of course, they went to contract. And as part of this new plan, if you will, one of the 4 pillars was location management and presence management. This was kind of before we had started even talking to MediaTel and had really, before we had gone internationally. They had decided to launch this service in early 2014. And what this was manual claiming on about 5 directories, and Google and Facebook. We heard today, I think just now, that 14 days is too long because you're going to churn out your customers. They were spending about, as you can see, 3 to 4 weeks just fulfilling the product. And any updates that needed to come through were all done manually. So there was a limit on the amount of updates, and again, as I was saying yesterday, they're not guaranteed updates. So MediaTel, I think, they only sold 650 customers in the first year. It was hard for sales reps to sell, it was hard to manage the operations, it was just a nightmare. And again, coming back to what I was saying yesterday about peeling the layer off of what the product is, if you see a lot of manual processes and claiming, it can get to be overwhelming very quickly, and that's what MediaTel found. So at the end of 2014, we visited with MediaTel, and we actually moved very quickly. And within 2 months, we had a signed publisher agreement, so they would publish the listings out alongside the rest of the network, and also the reseller agreement, where they were going to use our service instead. I think one of the most important things to talk about when looking at MediaTel is the focus that their entire senior team and management, the focus was on sales and was on actually getting this product out. There wasn't, there wasn't 6 or 14 or 18 different products. This was the product. This was the one that they decided they needed. And in Lubos's presentation, he was like, it wasn't a decision. We needed to keep our customers, and this was the way to do it. So they segmented their customers into 4 groups, and there are 4 different tiers of the product, which I'll come back to a little bit later. And one of those tiers enabled a bulk upload of around 11,000 locations. And the idea was that we gave MediaTel a low-cost package where we were kind of taking a hit and they were taking a hit. But this low-cost package it wasn't a complete network, but it was most of the network. And what they could do was give this to 11,000 customers and then upsell them to the appropriate package out of those 4 tiers that they had decided on based off of how much the customer was paying before and what the customer was actually subscribed to. We've seen huge success here. I should also just quickly point out that, I said before that their management team was really focused on this, listening to calls, talking to sales reps every day. He said that his whole senior team knew all of the numbers on a daily basis for the first couple months that this was launched. But what this slide is showing is that 4 weeks turned into 5 days. And the whole product was fulfilled in 5 days. And the customer could actually see all their listings online and interact with them in a matter of days. So it really cut out the entire operations for them so that they could actually focus on the sales effort. So in 1.5 months, they have upsold 2,300 locations. And what you're seeing on the left is how many of those, they sold 2,300. It's about 75% of them were upsold from the bulk upload, and the other 25% were new businesses that came in. And then on the right, it's really just split between field sales and telesales. It's almost 50-50. I should also just quickly point out with MediaTel, I focused more on the bulk upload and kind of that they really needed to do something and how they segmented their customers. But there's a number of direct marketing campaigns that they're doing. They have the scan, the business sales scan online where it shows you where you're listed and then you can purchase the product. They have that. They have their direct marketing packages set up. They're doing flyers and mailers. So they really are coming at this from all angles. So I think to wrap it up, even though these are two very different cases, there are a couple of themes that we've seen here and that we've seen with other partners as well. The first, especially with DTG, is just keep it simple. With DTG, they're not doing online sales. There's a rep that's talking to every single customer, and to just keep it simple, they can focus not on which package is right for you, but just why you should get the product, yes or no. The exception is direct marketing. Usually there's 4 or 5 packages that will make sense with direct marketing, although even in MediaTel's case, a lot of those packages actually look very similar on the back end. The second thing we've seen is that both field and telesales can sell this. We've also seen that it is appropriate for acquisition, but also retention. And then finally, with both of these cases, they were very focused on the sales effort, not as much on what the product was doing or how the product was going to work. They sort of left that up to us, and we were grateful for that because we don't know sales the way that they do. So it was kind of a perfect synergy. And I think on that last point, I pulled this quote from our VP of Small Business Sales. He was doing a training last week, and it kind of made me laugh on the call, but it's very true. He was saying, anybody that's been in sales, you've probably sold a product that didn't work, and this one actually does work. And it was the feedback from MediaTel, it was the feedback from DTG. Yahoo is a partner in the US. LocalWorks is powered by Yext, and the first feedback that we got after 3 weeks of selling it was, oh my God, thank you, this product actually works. We don't have to spend any energy making sure that it fulfills what it's supposed to for the customer. So.
All right, great, thank you. And none of these are all sold standalone, none of these are packaged with anything else?
The ones that I was talking about, no, they're not. Although many times they are packaged with websites or SEO.
And does that impact the success of it, do you think?
I mean, it depends. I think, Yodel is a partner in the US, and they have upwards of 40,000 locations with us, and they're hard bundling it, and they're not actually even selling it as presence because it's so powerful as an SEO tool as well, and we can publish the track numbers. Okay. Whereas Dex is selling it alongside websites, so I think it can.
Okay, so all various models.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be sold standalone. Think about it. This seems like a product that could be sold online, but it's not being sold online.
It is with MediaTel.
Yeah. Okay.
So they are transacting online. We sell it directly online. Many partners do. I think the point was kind of if you have reps that are selling it, it was easier for the sales team if it's just a single product, easier for the customers to understand when they're talking to somebody, but as a direct marketing tactic, many times you will have an array of options. In the case of Yext Direct, when they come to our site and go through our flow, they're faced with 4 options, but ultimately if they don't convert and we follow up with them, we're only selling one package.
Okay, all right, thanks a lot. Yeah. That's great.